The St. John's Storytelling Festival is coming up this year from October 10th to 15th, and we're joined today by the festival manager, Kailey Bryan, as well as the festival's president, Christine Hennebury. Thank you both for coming in today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
So now the Storytelling Festival, it's been around since 2004, as I understand it. Maybe you could tell us a bit about what it is and how it all got started.
Okay, well, it actually started out as just part of the folk festival. I wasn't part of the organization then, but over the years it's become a more elaborate event. It's gone from just being a few stories in a tent to being a series of concerts and events and workshops and activities designed to help. Well, it has a number of purposes, actually. We're providing storytelling for the people of St. John's and the surrounding area, so there's entertainment. There's also the opportunity for local storytellers to do some professional development. And there's opportunities for the general public to come and learn how to tell stories. And they also get to meet storytellers we've had people from all over the world. This year we have people from Ireland, and we have Sherry Fitch, who is from
British Columbia.
So we have we just have a nice mix of people coming, and so over time we've had all kinds of different people, and we're just trying to let local people hear stories from everywhere, and for everyone to share in the stories that are here. There's sort of two misconceptions about storytelling. One is that it's just for children, and that nothing could be further from the truth. Everything we do is story. Every activity, every time you come home and you tell someone what happened while you were out, you're sharing the story. You're getting them to connect with you over the things that happened. And so we want everyone to realize that stories are for everyone, and it's a skill that almost anyone can develop. And there's also this sort of sense when we talk about storytelling that people are coming and doing readings and that sort of stuff. And that's not what they're doing at all. They're telling you stories that they have made their own. It's something sort of like memorizing, but it's not exactly. You don't hear the same story twice from a storyteller. It depends on the audience and everything else. They're not reading off a sheet of paper. In fact, that's not even allowed. They're getting up and they're sharing a piece of their knowledge with you. So it's a really interesting experience to both to do and to listen to.
You painted a really good picture, I think, because when I think of storytelling, the first, I have these images of, a parent reading a story to a child or, sitting around a campfire. Mm-hmm. But today with, all modern technology, social media, television, storytelling must be changed. Does storytelling change with, shifting technologies and so on?
Oh, absolutely. There's sort of the traditional storytelling in which someone's sitting usually on a stool up in front of the room, and they've got both their hands on both their knees, and they're telling you the tale and solely the power of their voice. And that is one terrific type of storytelling. There's also the kind of storytelling that I do, which is a lot of physical movement. I come from a bit more of a theater background, and so I'm incorporating my body into the storytelling. And then there are people who are doing all kinds of digital storytelling. There are people who are bringing multimedia factors in. There are people who are bringing dance in or music. It's so much easier to experiment with stories now and how you're going to tell them, how they're going to get across, than it once was. For example, if you want to bring in a piece of music into your story, once upon a time it would have been either you'd have to bring in a whole band or you'd have to bring in all this elaborate equipment to play the music, and now you could record a bit of music on your phone and hook it up to a Bluetooth speaker, and a Bluetooth speaker would be more like a pirate, I think. I don't think they want to be hooked up to your phone. Anyhow, a Bluetooth speaker, and you can play something instantly like that, and it gives people the opportunity to do storytelling podcasts or little videos. For World Storytelling Day this year, on my personal Facebook page for my own storytelling consulting and the like, I did I told one of my favorite stories to tell. 25 minutes of Facebook video of me telling the story of Count Silvernose, just to share that. And it was only because I thought of it 9:30 and I said, oh, I should have done something for World Storytelling Day. So I propped up my phone on my computer in my office and told the story. So it was kind of neat to be able to do that and share that right away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the huge benefits of the convergence of the traditional storytelling practice and our sort of new media opportunities is that Christine can do something like prop up her phone, tell a story, and share it with a network who otherwise might not have access to it. But something else that is advantageous about that experience is it increases our appreciation of the immediacy when you are in a room with a storyteller and the energy that's created by the crowd and that performer. So I think that it benefits us in multiple ways.
I completely agree.
I wonder, in this age where we're kind of swimming in information, and we're having these backlashes against fake news and people really trying to kind of grasp for, I guess, whatever information relates to them. There must be people who argue storytelling is not relevant. How would you respond to someone, to speak about the relevance of storytelling today?
Storytelling has been around since the first people were speaking. And it is when someone tells you a story, you can connect with that in a way you can't connect with fake news or anything like that, because when I tell you a story, if I tell you the story of my great dramatic parking experience trying to get here, every verb that I use is connecting to a piece of your brain. If I say that I ran up the hill, the part of your brain that's involved when you run lights up. Inside, I mean, obviously not literally lights up, but that the neurons in that area are firing. So you are connecting to the feeling of running up the hill. I'm not just tapping into your emotions. I'm tapping in a very sort of visceral, connected way. And people, when they connect to stories like that, it stays with them. It holds them in a way, and they remember things in a different way when it's encoded in a story than if I just gave you a list. If I give you a list, only the parts of your brain that are connected with reading and that sort of thing fire. But if I tell it to you in a story, you get a full visual and your whole brain gets involved. When I tell stories in schools, one of the things I start out with is as a warning. I say, well, imagine your teacher told you at lunchtime that you were not to go behind the school at lunch because it's dangerous in the woods. About half of you would listen. But if I tell you the story of last year when the kid fell into the alligator pit and they only ever found his sneaker, and then I tell this whole elaborate tale and every time I get every kid, and they think that some kid actually did fall in an alligator pit until I let them out of the story thing. And they always remember. I've had kids I told that story to 8 years ago, and they still say, hey, we never go out behind the school. And so there is an authenticity, a real connection that comes with a story that can't be replicated in any other way. Not just the oral tradition stories, but in many different types of stories. But oral tradition has a certain specific, it's almost, I hesitate to use the words, but it's the only sort of vocabulary I have, where it's almost like an ancestral memory. Like we're connecting in a way that reminding of that this is how information used to be shared. And it's a lot easier to remember information in a story too. So I think it's highly relevant, and not just in a marketing buzzword sort of way, because there's a lot of things. Oh, well, you have to tell the story of your brand. That's one type of thing. That's sort of co-opting the skill of story for connection. And that's all well and good if you're in marketing, but for the rest of us, it's that connection can remind us all of a sort of a common human experience.
And there's a lot of that foundational connectivity of storytelling that is not only useful in this broad human or philosophical sense, but it's also useful on the ground when you have especially contemporary activism meeting storytelling. For example,
Yes.
Last year we had Ivan E. Coyote here. They're a trans activist from the Yukon. Or, for example, Kai Cheng Tom just released a book, and she's a racialized trans activist, I think based in Toronto, also working in Montreal or collaborating with people in Montreal, and they just released a kid's book. So now the storytelling meets the literary, and they can tour that, and they're talking to parents, they're talking to families, and they're talking about the fluidity of gender in a way that takes that connectivity that is central to the art of storytelling and uses it to build bridges that will ultimately be useful for us developing, socially and just developing our humanity and our sensitivity and our consciousness.
Yeah.
So
storytelling builds understanding. I've read a quote once, and I can't remember from who, but said that the real power of storytelling is that it makes you say, "Oh, me too."
I liked the example you used of going to a school. I remember when I was in elementary school, every September, the teachers would tell us a story about the woods behind the school. And every year, it boiled down to there was something dangerous, stay out of the woods. And one year it was a zombie. Another year it was a cannibal hippie. But I don't remember my teachers, but I remember these stories every time I walk past those woods.
Yes.
Still now. You're both clearly very passionate about storytelling. Can I ask how you each kind of got involved, or I guess what attracted you to storytelling?
I can't remember when I wasn't telling stories. That's my bio for storytelling says that my storytelling career started when I tried to get myself out of trouble by when I was 4 years old. My parents came home. They had been out. I was with a babysitter, and I was holding an empty bottle of bubbles. And there was a big wet spot on the couch. And they asked what happened, and I said, I don't know, just some water just came right out of my nose and went all over the couch. And I immediately, it was a very elaborate lie. And that's why, so I think that's when things started for me. But I've always been interested in writing stories, and I've done some acting, and I do monologues, that sort of stuff. I'm not a trained actor, but more community theater, and I do monologues and that sort of stuff, and present my own writing in a live sort of fashion. And a long time ago now, Dale Jarvis asked me to host the storytelling circle that we have every month, and I had no idea what to do. And I looked up what storytelling involved. I was like, oh, I already do that. And so it's just kind of built from there. So that hosting that was kind of the gateway drug to calling myself a storyteller. And it's very, very exciting, and it's connected all the other ways that I like to spend my time professionally and personally. They're all connected through story, through writing, and I do some life coaching too. I help people tell themselves better stories. And so it's just, the story that you have in your head of who you are, I want to help you be kinder to yourself when you're telling it. So it was the final puzzle piece that made everything else fit.
I am not myself a storyteller, but I love watching other people and listening to other people tell stories. And the truth of that is that my dad wouldn't call himself a storyteller either, but he is a magnificent spinner of yarns. And a lot of that came from his, better part of a decade of experiences touring in the band bus in the 70s through Ontario and Quebec. And the repertoire of hilarious, mischievous tales that come from my dad that were part of what I was brought up on. And I didn't realize until much later in my life that this is actually a storytelling practice. And similar to what we're talking about with the terror in the woods behind the school, I will never forget these stories that my dad told me. And similarly, I think everyone in my mom's family, like Christine says, you don't realize you're telling stories all the time, but they're very much storytellers. And I grew up in kitchens full of stories all the time. It's sort of a renowned quality of my mom's family. So when I, grew up and came to activism and came to storytelling, meeting activism, and then came to the opportunity as an administrator, which is actually what really excites me. I love organizing things. That I got to do that for a storytelling festival was really very thrilling for me, and I get to see all the shows. So
a lot of people think of Newfoundland and Labrador as a place that is particularly rooted in oral storytelling traditions. How do you feel that we kind of compare against other storytelling?
I think that here in Newfoundland and Labrador, we have a lot of people who would not call themselves storytellers, and but that they are storytellers, and there's a lot of connection through story. And you, I don't know about your experience, but I have an awful lot of experiences in which, I know a story that my grandmother told me, and I'll mention this to somebody, and one of the other characters in the story is someone they know or they're connected to. And so I think that here in Newfoundland, where we haven't always been a very wealthy place, all of our sort of we have, I guess, a lot of social capital, maybe. And so it all comes into, well, you know this person and they'll fix your car if you bring them 4 loaves of bread and that sort of stuff. And I think that's tied into our sense of that we sort of respect that there are all these social connections. And that's partially due to our size. I'm not necessarily saying that we have a superior sense of that, but the size of our province has let us maintain that. Whereas in places where things are bigger and there's more formal ways of negotiating these relationships and stuff, some of that maybe has not been as important. But I would say that just about any small town that you went to would have that same sort of sense or tradition. You know very well that this person can't be the mayor because their great-grandfather did thing X, but they're excellent if you get them to be the park ranger because of that same set of skills. So, that kind of thing. So I think that we do indeed, there is something unique here, and I think that it is connected to that sense of having to stay connected to one another. I don't know that that's missing elsewhere, but if I was looking for it somewhere else, I would look in a small town. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. Why don't we talk about what you have in store for this year's festival? It's October 10th to 15th.
That is correct. So we are bringing a master canoe builder born into a trapping family. Joe Gowdy is coming from Labrador, and he just has the most captivating voice. Even when I'm talking to him on the phone, I'm like, tell me more about your day, Joe. So I'm really excited to have Joe Gowdy coming. We also have Len Graham and Jack Lynch coming from Ireland. Now, Jack was here in 2014, I believe, was very popular. So he is bringing now his partner in song. So they're going to be doing story and song in the Irish tradition. They're helping us kick off the festival at our festival launch party on Tuesday the 10th. That's from 5 to 7 in the Rocket Room. So there will be snacks and drinks as well. And then we have Cherie Fitch, who's coming in conjunction with her launch of a book with Running the Goat, Books and Broadsides. So she's going to be participating in a variety of festival events and leading a workshop for us on Saturday morning, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. that is really teaching you about how do you create a narrative that sort of exists on the page and how do you transform that into a compelling oral story. So that's happening at Gower Street United Church. And then we'll also have a huge variety of local tellers. We have Angus Anderson, who is here at CHMR doing the first all Aboriginal radio show. So you can catch Angus on CHMR in advance and probably after the festival. Chris Brooks will be joining us. Bryan Cherwick, who's bringing some stories from the Ukraine. We'll also have local favorite Gary Green. Our dear Christine Hennebury will be hosting. Dale Jarvis, the provincial folklorist, who you will also be familiar with from here. And a huge variety of other awesome local tellers, poet pilot Dave Padden. It's going to be a great festival.
Well, there's a lot of great things in store, it sounds like. And it also, it sounds like storytelling, is far from a dying art, which clearly you never thought it was, but some people might. What do you think the years to come have in store for the art of storytelling? Do you ever think forward?
Yes, I think forward all the time. What we're going to do in the next few years with the Storytelling Festival, it's one of our main objectives, is to expand the number of voices that we have and the range and diversity of voices. Because we want to be one of the organizations that's providing a venue, an opportunity for previously unheard voices or underrepresented voices to share their stories. The more people that can share their stories, the more a world of possibility opens up. Because when you hear someone tell a story and you hear a previously unheard voice, it opens up a little door in your head, and you see more possibilities, and you see things that can be done. As soon as one person starts to do something, then a lot of other people see what can be done. And so we can just keep unfolding possibilities, and we want to be part of that process. I can see a lot more, for the art of storytelling as a whole. I think there are going to be many, many people who are continuing to do, stand up in front of the crowd or sit down in front of the crowd kind of storytelling, but there's also going to be a lot more interconnection worldwide. that there's going to be, that we'll be able to talk on Skype to make a big plan for some sort of collaborative storytelling event that's going to happen online, and there'll be people from all over the world, all kinds of voices chiming in, and we'll have someone here in Newfoundland that Newfoundlanders know, so they'll tune in to listen to that. And meanwhile, there'll be an African voice in there too that they've never heard before, and that's another door open, another connection made. And the people in Africa who know this person will be able to tune in and open that door. And so it will just be, there's a chance to make the world a whole lot smaller. I know that there's a lot of frustration out now with the fact that there's so much information out there, there's so much digital connection, and in some ways people see that as a bad thing because we're getting this information, we're awash in information all the time. But I think that there are so many people who are aware that this is an issue that we're developing systems to help deal with that. So we're going to find ways to conquer that information overload. And so while there is that challenge on one side, the information overload, there's also this balance on the other side of these connections to the good.
Okay, I was thinking that actually earlier. That it sounds like everyone has stories to tell, but probably not all stories are heard, or at least not heard as widely as they need to be. So it's good to hear that you're paying attention. You're trying to diversify and expand, I guess, the stories people hear as well. Yes. It can be very challenging to figure out how to reach out to people whose voices you haven't heard. So if you haven't heard them, how do you know where to find them? And at the same time, if the festival always looks the same and sounds the same, well, then it might not occur to people to reach out to it. Reach out to us to try to have their voices heard. And there's a lot of work to be done in that in-between space of how do we find the people how do we establish that our doors are open, and how do we get people in? Okay, well, this is great. Is there anything either of you would like to add? People can check out our whole schedule on our website at storytellingstjohns.ca. The story of why it's set up that way in reverse has been lost in the mists of time. However, that's the website, storytellingstjohns.ca. And you can find us on Facebook as well, facebook.com, obviously, Storytelling St. John's. and people who want to get involved, I guess, either in this festival or in future years, I guess check out online is the best way. Yes, please. Yeah. Please do. And you can also email us directly at storytellingstjohns@gmail.com. Perfect. Okay, fantastic. Well, thanks both of you very much. Thank you for having us. That's been Kailey, Bryan, and Christine Hennebury from the St. John's Storytelling Festival.